唔該。咁多位。
Good morning, members. I would start the meeting. First, the chairman is about to join us. We have a formal quorum, and I'll call the meeting to order. First item, information paper issued since the last meeting. That is after the meeting held on the 25th of July. We have received 12 information papers, all listed under item 1 of the agenda. Items for discussion at the next meeting, please refer to CP 443 18 19 bracket 01 for the list of outstanding items, and also CP 443 18 19 bracket 02 for a list of follow-up actions. Any questions on this item? Mr. Lam Shatin, many members of the panel are concerned about the earlier incident on the MTR where a number of lines were paralyzed. Have we put this on the list already? I think we are talking to the government. Has the government indicated whether this matter will be discussed at the transport panel or at the subcommittee on railways? This is an important matter. I would like to have a discussion at the panel. All right, your suggestion is noted. You want the transport panel to deal with it. Well, yes, in the last year or so, we have 3 or 4 serious incidents of signaling failure affecting millions of passengers. This is totally unacceptable. Ms. Claudia Mo. Again, it's the chaos during the morning hours for work. I have written to the subcommittee on railways asking for a special meeting to be convened. But you said that this should be dealt with by the panel. No. The discussion with the government is still going on. What's your understanding? Which forum would be more appropriate? I think both will have to deal with it. Yeah, by the name of the subcommittee, perhaps they should be more focused on railway-related matters. We'll talk to the government and then come to a decision soon. Please do. Members, concerning the incident involving the 4 MTR lines, I received letters and I have communicated with the government, and in a moment we are going to set up a subcommittee on railways, and the government would attend a meeting of the subcommittee very soon to answer questions on that incident on the MTR. Ms. Tanya Chen, tomorrow, well, yesterday, we were told that we are going to visit the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge site. Are we going to get some information from the Secretariat so that we know at least, well, we have received information on the itinerary, but are we going to be supplied with more information, or should our own ward officers be responsible for the research? Because in the past, when we conducted a visit, there would be some information from the Secretariat to help us. You know that this project has been carried on and on for many years, and the budget overruns have been staggering, and we have yet to know the final bill. I know the Secretariat has been asking the government to see if any information or paper can be provided to members. I've only just received the invitation, and I asked the Secretariat to forward the message to members right away. I don't know whether they will make it they will be able to produce a paper for us. I'll ask the Secretariat to follow up the matter. Mr. Chan Chi-chin, some members asked whether we should discuss the matter on the incident on the MTR system. I'm not a member of the subcommittee on railways. You know that on Hong Kong Island on that day, you have different tram stops lined by people as if those stops are just one stop. I hope that there will be a chance for the panel to discuss the matter, the incident as well. Mr. Chan, I look your suggestion, and we are going to talk to the government concerning the arrangement for the panel this year. And the railway incident will be the subject of discussion for the subcommittee. But if we want to talk about traffic as well, we would like to do it at the panel. We would let the government know. Mr. Gary Fan, on the duty visit to Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge, I've signed up for that visit. In the last session, when Mr. Frankie Yik was the chairman, I already told him, I already wrote to the panel in April asking for a visit to be arranged, and not just for the bridge itself, but also for the defensive embankment there, but we have not been given a response, so that we can look at all the relevant facilities there apart from the control center. We are going to look at the boundary crossing facilities. And this arrangement is done at the request of members' request. And some members did ask for this visit. That's why we have arranged one. So we asked them to make the necessary arrangement as requested, but it is arranged by the government, and they want us to with them, and I can only do it to the extent of their arrangement. But I think the panel must ask for a proper arrangement. It was only 3 days ago that we were informed about this visit, and they are not fully responding to our request. Chairman, please seriously put forward our request to the government. Well, we would go all the way, we'll go a long way to go to the bridge. Why can't we take a look also at the breakwater? Is there something that they want to hide, that they don't want us to know? Well, I would relay your views to the government. Since we have a very long agenda, now we have Ms. Claudia Mo as the last one speaking on this matter. I hope you tell the government in no uncertain terms that, that you say that the visit is arranged as requested by members, and please tell them that the members would like to request to take a look at the breakwater. This is not an organized tour, and you have fixed the itinerary, and we just sign up if we want to join. The problems with the breakwater is obvious, and now you're just trying to look the other way as if there's no problem. I've signed up, but if we are not allowed to take a look at the breakwater, then I would say that you are really trying to pull wool over our eyes. I don't know whether we are going to go to the breakwater, see the breakwater. What's happened? Has it been submerged underwater. Well, we're going to go to the link road there. I don't know whether from there you can see the breakwater. I know you have this request, and I'll let them know. Okay. All right. For the next meeting is on the 16th of November. We have 3 items: universal accessibility program, rationalization of traffic distribution among 3 harbor crossings, and enhancing the public transport services. Please refer to item 3 for this on the list of outstanding items. We have 3 items for the next meeting, and I want to allow sufficient time for the discussion. I advance the starting time to 10 a.m. Any comment? All right, so it's 10 a.m. We start at 10 a.m. Now let's have the policy address briefing. Please invite the officials to come to join us. We press the button.
出席今日嘅會議呢，就係陳帆局長啦、黎義德秘書長、常秘書長啦，咁鐘錦華路政處處長、陳美寶運輸處處長、潘婷婷運輸處副秘書長，咁就蔡潔明副秘書長、羅翠薇副秘書長嘅。名單睇下電腦顯唔顯示到先。係20個。20個，范國威、陳志全、郭家麒、陳淑莊、毛孟靜、胡志偉、劉國勳、田北辰、潘兆平、鄭松泰、楊岳橋、林卓廷、區諾軒、陳恒鑌、易志明，跟住第16呢，就係朱凱迪。第17葛珮帆，18係譚文豪，19係姚思榮，20係陸頌雄嘅。OK， 好，葉太你撳掣喎。
撳咗我呢度。
撳咗，但係我呢度有21嚇，唔好意思。咁而家請局長發言。
多謝主席。主席。行政長官喺上個星期發表咗2018年嘅施政報告。今日我向各位議員簡介施政報告及2018年政府施政綱領裏邊有關陸路運輸嘅重點政策措施。香港嘅路面空間有限，我哋唔能夠單靠不斷興建道路嚟解決交通擠塞。針對個別交通特別擠塞嘅地方，好似隧道同埋商業區，我哋建議研究按擠塞徵費嘅理念，增減各類別車輛使用政府收費隧道，以及青馬。
We will revise the toll for the various expressways and roads in order to create more road space with the commissioning of the Central Wan Chai Bypass and the Eastern Corridor link. In future, we will implement the pilot electronic road pricing system in Central and its nearby areas, and the consultation will be done in the first half of 2019. Many members of the public face traffic congestion when they cross the harbour every day. The administration has said that the WHC should be used to redistribute traffic from the Hung Hom Tunnel and Eastern Cross Harbour Tunnel. We are proposing that from the 1st of January 2020, we should lower the toll for private cars, taxis, motorcycles when they use WHC, and also we will raise the toll for Hung Hom and Eastern tunnels so as to redirect traffic to WHC. I must emphasize that cross-harbour traffic congestion affects the tunnels, but in fact the queues would also block non-cross-harbour traffic. These motorists will be affected, and it will also affect the public at large. Their journey time will be lengthened. If we can redistribute traffic amongst the 3 cross-harbour tunnels, we hope to achieve 2 purposes. Number 1, we can make the best use of the residual design capacity of WHC in order to relieve congestion at Hung Hom and Eastern tunnels, so that the queues at the two tunnels will be reduced by 10% to over 40% during peak hours. Say, for example, for Gascoigne Road Bridge, the queue can be reduced from 2.9 km to 2.1 p.m. in the morning peak hours. At the same time, we'll be able to allow traffic to be diverted from Waterloo Road, and traffic going from West Kowloon and Mong Kok to Tsim Sha Tsui will be less congested as a result. Number two, that we can shorten the queues at Hung Hom and Eastern Tunnels link roads so that there will be less impact on non-cross harbour traffic. Look at Gloucester Road North. In the evening peak hours, the queue at Hung Hom Station will cause a grid at Admiralty and Wan Chai. It is said that we can reduce the queue at the relevant area around the Revenue Tower, and so that we can have more traffic diverted from Tim Wah Road, Tim May Road, Performance Road, and also Gloucester Road, so that there will be much relief given to non-cross harbour traffic. Members, please make use of the information tabled for members. They will show that with the implementation of this proposal, there will be a good effect. If we can adjust tunnel fees, we can relieve traffic congestion, and the road traffic would become more efficient, and members of the public will save their journey time if they use at-grade traffic. This is also in echoing our smart mobility proposal, so that we can encourage the public to make more use of public transport. All in all, we can save about $800 million in terms of social cost if we have this adjustment package. Apart from that, we can also reduce carbon dioxide emission from cars by 3,800 tons every year, meaning we will be able to plant 160,000 trees. The entire society will benefit. We know that some quarters think that if we lower the toll for Hung Hom and Eastern tunnels, say if private cars should be asked to pay only $5 or $10 more. I understand some motorists using these two tunnels may not choose to use WHC even if the toll for WHC is lowered. However, the purpose of redistribution does not mean that every motorist using the two tunnels should use WHC. We just think that some motorists who can choose to use other tunnels can use WHC so as to relieve congestion at the two tunnels. This will allow those who remain in the two tunnels to travel at a shorter duration. I must point out that the proposed new tolls are scientific analysis based, and we have already used a lot of mathematical models. After careful analysis by the TD and also consultants, we know that if the proposal is not supported, if we reduce increases for the two tunnels or lower the toll at WHC even more, there will be a reduction of the possible effect of the redistribution proposal. And in fact, the situation may deteriorate. First of all, if we lower the increase for the two tunnels, it will not be effective in changing the habit of some motorists. It will not help the very serious congestion at Hung Hom Tunnel. And in fact, it will make the Eastern Tunnel more congested. And this will hurt the interests of people who must the Eastern Tunnel. Say, for example, in the morning peak, the queue would affect the non-tunnel traffic on Kwun Tong Road and Shang Kwan O Road. Members, please make reference to the information tabled. It shows that there will be an impact on Eastern Cross Harbour Tunnel. On the other hand, if we lower the toll of WHC, there will be queues at the portal and they will affect non-cross harbour traffic. The WHC franchisee has assessed the financial impact on itself according to the proposal made by the government, and in principle it has agreed to the toll compensation scheme. If we adjust the specific toll, the WHC franchisee will have to make the assessment again, and the government will have to restart consultation with the franchisee on the toll compensation scheme. Actually, the administration and the WHC franchisee has discussed it for over half a year, and the procedures will take time. In other words, if we do not receive the support of the LegCo when the franchise ends in 2023, there will be no other ways in order to tackle cross-harbor traffic congestion. The details of the proposals are in the paper issued to members earlier. In the regular meeting of the panel in November, we will have an in-depth discussion with members again. The Hong Kong vehicle fleet has increased rapidly in the past 10 years at an average annual rate of 3%. With a modest average annual growth of only 0.9% in car parking provision, we need to provide more car parking spaces to respond to public aspirations, with priority accorded to meeting the parking needs of commercial vehicles. The government will continue to make use of lease conditions in order to require private developers to provide public parking spaces where possible. The administration will follow the principle of single-site multi-use to provide public car parking spaces at suitable GIC facilities and public open space projects. If it is technically feasible, we expect that in the next 5 years, where it is possible, we will be able to provide at least 1,500 public parking spaces in GIC and POS sites. Furthermore, the government will take other measures in order to increase the supply of parking places. Say, for example, where possible, we can have nighttime parking spaces, and also requiring new developments to provide more parking spaces according to the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines, and also to allow school buses to park within school campuses after school, and also to provide more laybys for coaches, and also to make use of automatic parking system in government parking lots. When we build discipline services quarters, we will increase the number of car parking spaces as far as technically feasible, taking into full account the unique operational requirements of the services. And as for public transport services, we have made new enhancement proposals. The PA proposes that we should waive the toll for public franchised buses. Specifically, we want to waive the toll for government tunnels and roads, and all the saved expenses should be put into a franchised bus toll waiver fund of the individual franchisees so as to relieve the pressure on fare increase. If the individual franchisees do not have any fare increase pressure, we will set a cap for that waiver fund. If the fund reaches that cap, then bus companies who have no fare increase pressure will have to make use of the fund beyond the cap to provide fare concessions. Together with the WHC franchisee, we have agreed in principle that the government will pay for the toll of franchise buses using WHC. If the toll compensation scheme of WHC is passed and implemented, then franchised bus operators again will have to put the saved toll into their own franchised bus toll waiver fund in order to relieve fare increase pressure. At the same time, the government is looking into similar arrangements with the Tai Lam Tunnel franchisee. The TD is prepared to revive the central Hung Hom ferry route and to pilot water taxi services. Commercial elements would be introduced into the Hung Hom South ferry pier in order to inject vibrancy into the Hung Hom Promenade. In order to further promote smart city and allow the public to plan their trips, we are putting aside $31 million to help GMBs to look into information collection and data systems in order to provide GPS for them, and also people can use the Hong Kong e-mobility app and also the TD website in order to get the real-time arrival time. And also the data.gov.hk website will use a machine-readable format in order to disseminate the information. The GMB operators can also use the data for fleet management for better operational efficiency. We'll continue to discuss with other franchisees, including MTR and buses, in order to discuss with them opening up real-time information. In order to further enhance the operational safety of franchised buses, we are putting aside $500 million to assist these franchisees in order to retrofit existing buses with 3 safety. Sorry, Secretary, Mr. Kwokaki, actually we have already read the paper. We have over 20 members queuing to ask questions. Through the chairman, can I ask the secretary to be more precise? Secretary, can you be more precise? Because we can read. I understand. I will speak briefly. Okay, please be very brief. In order to enhance operational safety of franchise buses, we are putting aside $500 million to assist franchisees to retrofit 3 safety installations on existing buses. First, to the electronic stability control that will give more stability and also prevent rollover, and also speed limiting retarder. And also on long-haul bus routes which use expressways with fewer stops, the retrofitting of safety belts on all seats on the upper deck. We propose to subsidize them with 80% of the fees. And of course, the maintenance fees will be shouldered by the franchisees in order to provide transport for all and green transport, and also to help the sector introduce more environmentally friendly and barrier-free PLB models. We propose to amend the law to allow PLBs to have a length of 7.5 meters. In the last policy address, we propose the non-means tested public transport fare subsidy scheme to lower the public transport fare burden of the public who use public transport. We are now rolling out the subsidy scheme and doing the preparation, and we will implement it on the 1st of January 2019. In response to Hong Kong's social and economic development and also changes in demand for transport, we are rolling out different infrastructure in order to improve the entire system. We are now pushing forward Route 6, including the Central Kowloon Route and also Tseung Kwan O Lam Tin Tunnel.
And within this legislative session, we would like to secure funding for the T2 Chung Road and Cha Ko Leng Tunnel so that we can start work in the latter half of 2019, and also to link it with Route 6. And we intend to commission the entire line by 2025. At the same time, in May and June, we have secured funding for the Tseung Kwan O Cross Bay Link project and also the widening project of Tai Po Highway Shatin section. As for other railway projects, such as smart traveling initiatives and also the universal accessibility programs, they are all set out in the paper provided to members as mentioned by Dr. Kwok. Secretary, your speaking note will be distributed to members. So members may now raise questions. Everyone is given 4 minutes, and I'm going to manage time very stringently. On the 16th of September, we were hit by Typhoon Mangkhut. The government failed to respond quickly. And then on the 16th of October, the MTR experienced a total system failure involving 4 lines, and there was a total collapse in public transport. But you are still going to give priority to MTR and also the railway-based public transport policy. The policy address does not mention the strategic review on public transport. When would it be done? In the last session, well, we said we would like to have a strategic review of public transport, and you only carry out piecemeal studies. This incident of MTR and the aftermath are the result of allowing the MTR to enjoy a monopoly. Every time you are saying that you attach importance to such incidents, but why do you still allow MTRC so much say? For example, they have only got a bus fleet that would give them a 25% capacity as compared with MTRC train service. Your government, you are being too lax with the MTRC. They should be given a fine. They should be imposed a fine of $20 million. And now, how come you only impose a $2 million fine because of the delays? So, Secretary, when are you going to have the second review of the public transport review so that we can avoid the undesirable consequences of having MTRC enjoying a monopoly or having the railway first transport policy? Well, Hong Kong is a place with a big population and heavy traffic. That's a fact. So we have always been according priority to public transport. And we have been recognized in worldwide that we have been doing a good job in public transport among first-rate, first-class cities. I'm talking about railway. Please let the Secretary finish first. If we look at the market share, we have 12 million passenger trips every day, and the railway will account for 5 or 6 million trips. Another 4 million taken up by bus, and 2 million by the minibus, and fewer than a million taken up by taxi. So we don't have a monopoly here, and we're not giving the MTR a monopoly, and we are not working on a unsound priority basis. I understand the public are very angry about the recent incidents. We'll look into the causes with the MTRC, and also whether that we'll see if there's a need to review the penalty system and the regulation of service and performance. We know that there is room for improvement. Please allow us time to look into this in great detail with the MTRC, and when we have some findings, we'll come back to brief members. So I'm sorry, Mr. Fan, your time is up. Mr. Chen Chi-chin, in this year's policy address, improving public transport service is only allowed 3 paragraphs of space, such as a bus safety belt, the resumption of ferry service from Hung Hom to Central, and another one. What's the highest, the number one concern of the traveling public? Well, we are concerned about the deteriorating railway service. Well, we are not asking for improvement. Just make sure that the service quality won't deteriorate. Every time the Secretary will say that you understand the worries of the public. Members have suggested that this is because, well, you have been letting the MTRC off the hook so lightly, and some transport department said it's not a disastrous incident. Please take it back. What do you mean by not? This is not a disaster. You know, the passengers was feeling hopeless when they were stranded in different platforms. Some even cried. This is the highest priority. What the policy address talks about is just some additional benefits, fringe benefits. They would rather that you impose a heavier penalty on the MTRC instead of allowing them half-year concession on some day. And this leads to another issue, the diversion of traffic for the three tunnels. I would like to tell the Secretary on behalf of Cheung Kwan O residents, during that day when the MTRC had a problem, the traffic at Cheung Kwan O collapsed. Can you tell them how they can use the Western Harbour Crossing? Of course, the Secretary would say that I'm not asking them to do this. I'm saying that some people would do it. And if you increase the tolls for the Cross Harbour Tunnel and not the Eastern Harbour Crossing, then there would be Eastern Harbour Crossing would be more congested, therefore affecting Cheung Kwan O residents. Well, I don't think the toll adjustments have anything to do with people's choice of using Eastern Harbour Crossing vis-a-vis Western Harbour Crossing. Cheung Kwan O is suffering from traffic congestion. And now with its plan to divert traffic, then Cheung Kwan O residents will suffer because of the toll adjustments. They will suffer. Thank you for giving me this chance to say something to Cheung Kwan O. We have been constructing the Lam Tin Tunnel where toll collection will be automatic. And the relevant Cross Bay Link and other link roads would be constructed to help ease the traffic for Cheung Kwan O residents. Yes, the incidents which we do not want to see repeated has caused problems for many passengers and the traveling public. Mr. Fan and Mr. Chan have asked whether we could have done anything on that day. Well, actually, we asked other public transport providers right away to beef up their service. But we have to understand that the capacity of public transport is much higher than other modes of, or the capacity of railway is much higher than other public transport providers. We will look into the various issues concerning railway services. Dr. Kokake. Well, the Secretary keeps talking about the traffic diversion of the 3 Cross Harbour tunnels. Well, look at the Shatin Central Link, the XRL, and the problems they have. The scandal has just been exposed. Among 77 wards, some of the bars have been taken out, missing. Well, this time the MTR system collapsed. The operation collapsed, and the government is the biggest shareholder, the majority shareholder of the MTRCL. You appointed the directors, and you are also represented on the board. And now you simply ignore that there was a problem, as if there's no problem. You want to redistribute traffic of the 3 tunnels. As Mr. San Chi-chin has said, people living in the Cheung Kwan O or Kowloon East, how come you ask them to use the Western Harbour Crossing? What about people living in Wan Chai and Central? After the toll increases, they will be paying additionally $400 million for users of Western Harbour Crossing, and for Cross Harbour Tunnel is at $230 million additionally. This is a secret arrangement. We have no say. Well, now you have reached a secret agreement with a commercial entity, and then we have no say. We can either take it or leave it. And now you have so many white elephant projects. The infrastructures are all shoddily constructed, and you're now entering a secret agreement with a commercial entity, and then people using the Eastern Harbour Crossing and Cross Harbour Tunnel will be paying for the subsidy that the government is going to pay to the operator of Western Harbour Crossing. What's the logic here? Well, the logic is very simple. All transport policies are formulated to promote the well-being of the public. What kind of welfare is this, or well-being is this? We have said this time and again. For this plan to work, we don't have to divert all users from Eastern Harbour Crossing and Cross Harbour Tunnels to Western Harbour Crossing. On your table, you will see the plan showing the situation for the 3 tunnels. For Eastern Harbour Crossing, if we reduce the tolls, the tailback will affect Taxcon's tunnel and the roundabout there. And I'm talking about effect. We're talking about the overall interest of the community. Yes, some motorists may have to pay higher tolls, to pay higher tolls because of this diversion. But what we're going to save is the social costs involved. What about the secret agreement? How can you sign a secret agreement with the harbor operator, cross harbor tunnel operator? Well, we need to get prepared before the agreement is presented for consideration. We must be prepared. Otherwise, we will not be able to give you the details. We believe providing details would allow the Council to take a comprehensive look at this. And the entire program would need to be approved funding-wise by this Council. And then the Council would have a chance to discuss it. Have you read any newspaper today? Well, I've heard that you learned much news from news reports. What about this news scandal involving the Shatin Central Link? What's your question? I have a question. Has the Secretary read about the latest problem with this Shatin Central Link? Well, according to your rules, I have to speak to the chairman. Thank you for your chairman. Thank you for your question, Ms. Tanya Chen. I read newspapers, including online versions. I have read both reports in the paper.
I believe the relevant matter would be handled by the Commission of Inquiry. There is no room for cover-up. I'm asking you whether you knew about it. In 2015, you were not in the post, but today, this is reported in the press, including online. Have you sought an understanding into the issue? You were asking him whether he was reading the papers. Chairman, don't waste my time. I'm asking him this follow-up question. Have you sought an understanding into the issue? You know where I'm coming from. This is not funny. You have been using 1 minute 23 seconds. Mr. Frank Cheng, cut out your gags. In 2015, you were not the Secretary for Transport and Housing. But last night, the news was online. Did you seek an understanding into the causes and the facts? Have you sought an understanding into it? If yes, why are we still paying the fees to the MTRCL? MTRCL knew that Leighton changed the plans unilaterally. Did you seek an understanding into it? Secretary, your answer. Thank you, Chair. We understand that these reports must have come from a source, but there is only one fact, and it should be handled by the COI, and that would be more proper. Secretary, how much salary do you receive? You must do the monitoring. The COI would only look at Project 112. But if this is about Hung Hom, then would you seek an understanding into the surrounding issues? If there is such a big mistake, why are you paying them $7.9 billion? And you are paying them quarterly. This is Hong Kong people's money. The MTRCL would not be over budgeted when it uses its own money, but when it uses taxpayers' money, it has a budget overrun and it is also experiencing a lot of delay. What about the M&V consultant? You, the Highways Department, the Railway Subcommittee, do we know about this? Secretary. Thank you, Chair. The government has entrusted the railway project to the MTRCL. There is a project management fee. We said clearly many times at the Council that with regard to the relevant responsibility and also the financial impact, we are seriously following up the matter. Please go back and look at the annual reports of the MTRCL. It has received all the fees, but this is in 2015 and it has already got all the management fees. You are telling me you're looking at the sums? What do you mean? You have already paid it. Are you going to get it back from MTRCL? Dare you get back the money from Shenzhen Municipal Government for our part in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge? Ms. Claudia Mo. Chairman, it's so ironic to hear from Mr. Frank Chen that there is only one fact. Yes, we are talking about facts with you. If you think the report is not a fact, then say so. Say that this is a wrong report, but you are hiding behind the Commission of Inquiry. You say that hearings will be conducted and you mean that you should not comment on it. But this is so irresponsible. The COI hearings are something for the future. And I'm asking you, what has happened before? You are an accountability official. I'm not talking about money with you. But the government and the MTRCL, in a way, are just passing money between two accounts. But I'm talking about the access to information by the public. It's said that back in 2013, Leighton has already changed the plans for 77 diaphragm walls, that they can change the plans so that they do not have to put in reinforcement bars at the top. What about the loading capacity? And I'm asking you, why you have to wait till 2015 to say that the government got to know about it, that Leighton changed the plans without approval. And between 2015 and now, we are in 2018, the MTRCL and the government said nothing about this. Are you deliberately hiding this from us? You think Hong Kong people are stupid? Please answer us. Secretary, thank you, Chair. I think we all know that there are many investigations that are being undertaken, including the COI, including the law enforcement agencies, and also that by the Buildings Department. All these investigations are going on. In the process, we should not comment on individual issues. This is so irresponsible. Chairman, what are you doing as an accountability official? Ms. Tanya Chan was asking you what your monthly salary is. This is really outrageous. You are cheating the public. Tomorrow we are going to pay a visit to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Hong Kong people are very worried about the breakwater at the artificial island. The dollars are falling away. Can you not guarantee that you are not just taking us for a very quick visit, that we should be able to look at the breakwater as well? Can you promise that? Secretary, Chairman. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge has not been commissioned. So tomorrow, when we visit it, we'll only be able to look at the bridge within Hong Kong boundary. Why can't we look at it as well? Hong Kong has paid for over half of the budget of the entire bridge. You are saying that we cannot look at the past belonging to others or in other people's boundaries, but we paid for it. This is outrageous. Chairman, please ask him the question. Well, you said it's outrageous, but what is your question? I already said so, that we are paying for the larger chunk of the budget. But you say that if it is a part outside Hong Kong, then we should not be able to see it. But we have paid for it in part, and we are going to use it as well. Is that within the Hong Kong boundary? Chairman, I said the bridge has not been commissioned. It has not been commissioned. The boundaries are still there. And practically today or tomorrow, as long as the bridge is not commissioned, we can only visit the parts within the Hong Kong boundary. This is nonsense. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Chairman. Many members have talked about the problems of the Shatin Central Link. The administration must give an account on it, especially with regard to today's report, that actually at a very early time the relevant departments already knew that Leighton and MTRCL had changed the structure at Hung Hom Station, and this was much earlier on, and still the administration seems not to be in the know, and that is what you said. I think that is unacceptable. I hope that you will let us know when the administration started to know that there were structural changes. And you must let us know the entire chronology. Secretary, I hope you will deal with this as soon as possible and give us a paper. Secondly, I'm interested in listening to you about parking spaces. The paper said that in the last 10 years, the annual growth rate was 3% for the vehicle fleet, and the annual growth rate for parking spaces is 0.9%. According to the estimate, if everything remains the same, then in the next 5 years, there will be 80,000 to 100,000 more vehicles running on our roads. I don't know whether this indeed is your estimate. If that's the case, you say you will provide 1,500 more public car parking spaces in the next 5 years, and you are not including those that will be scrapped by you. It's clear that this is much removed from the actual demand. How do you arrive at the number of 1,500? You said that you will look at the actual requirements of the discipline services and you're going to provide more parking spaces in their hostels. But we know that this has something to do with Hong Kong PSG. Does it mean then that you are going to apply new thinking to apply the Hong Kong PSG, and how it stipulates the provision of parking spaces? Lastly, you say you will review the universal accessibility scheme. I'd like to ask you whether you'll include private housing estates, that you are going to allow accessibility from these estates to public walkways. Secretary, Mr. Wu asked us to give an account. Later, we will write some papers for the council. I talked about 1,500 public car parking spaces to be provided on GIC sites and public open spaces, and we are going to apply the principle of single site multiple use. In fact, I also mentioned the Hong Kong PSG. We are going to use the upper limits allowed. And when we demolish or convert multi-story parking lots, we are going to ask the developer to build compensatory car parking spaces. As for universal accessibility, we're going to review it, and in that scheme, there will be flexibility. Even if a walkway is not a government walkway or highways department walkway, it can comply with certain conditions. We will include Mr. Wu's point in the review. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Chair. A few questions, please. The Hong Kong traffic situation is disastrous, particularly in the last 2 months, and particularly the MTR. Apparently, there are management and penalty problems. Secretary, can you review the penalty system and try to overhaul the MTR? Let me talk about roads first. You have proposed redistribution of traffic amongst the 3 cross-harbour tunnels, but it seems to me that it is not going to be able to bring a lot of effects, and in fact it can bring in more chaos because the vehicle fleet increase is much faster than road building. Look at NT East. Shatin, Tai Po, and the North have seen new towns being built, but you still just have one total harbour highway and also one rail. Whether you have redistribution of traffic, there will be congestion in Shatin and Tolo Highway. Your proposal is not going to help NT East. Shouldn't you provide a new road network for NT East? And listening to you, it seems the WHC is spearheading the change, that it is leading you on in your proposal. Well, no, but there are many other stakeholders in society, and you should listen to them before making a final decision. You should not only talk to WHC, and you shouldn't say that it is cast in concrete. You shouldn't say that take it or leave it, and then by 2023 we will be stuck in a certain situation. You have the consultants. Shouldn't you come up with a few proposals to say, if you add $10 to Hung Hom and reduce $10 from WHC, and then option B, the present one, and then option C, at least you try to make these mathematical models for our choice. But now, no, you say take it or leave it. There is an attitude problem on your part. Secretary, don't tell us there is no choice. I hope you say you are science-based, so show us the data. Let us know the effect of different options, and then we can talk to the public about them. Secretary, you should comment on this.
On the waiver of tunnel tolls for the franchise buses, why don't you cover all public transport and waive the tolls for all of them so that you can encourage more people to take public transport? And then there will be a fair competition environment for them all. And now this is inconsistent, and the operating environment of public transport would be skewed towards some. So please waive tunnel tolls for all public transport providers. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Lau, for your question. On the question of waiving or exempting tolls for franchise buses, Mr. Lau has referred to other modes of public transport. We have set out in the policy address that for public transport which has a big capacity and which is efficient, we are going to look into the question of tolls. We'll consider the situation with tolls for other means of public transport. And if our plan to redistribute traffic among the 3 tunnels is also approved, we'll see improvements. For the plan to for the redistribution of the 3 tunnels traffic, we would submit concrete plans to this council in due course. Mr. Michael Tin. Well, this is a policy address briefing. So I think, Chairman, I would support you if you say that other questions should not be raised today at this forum. On the question of the effectiveness of redistributing traffic of the 3 tunnels. But the biggest thought is that the total fare tolls for using the 3 tunnel will increase by $30. It will be at a higher level. I've talked to some experts. You can increase or decrease the tolls by $5. And then it will affect their choice of cross-harbor tunnels, but they will not be encouraged to use public transport. I don't know whom you have listened to, that the total tolls of $130 for the 3 tunnels would prompt more people to use public transport. You have talked to the WHC that it would be 40, 50, 50 in terms of tolls. And if you reduce all of them by $5, and that is reducing 5 in the 40, 50, 50 plan, the Western Harbour Crossing company will not object, because their traffic, their users will be affected by the relative toll levels only. So you should listen to us. Please talk to the Western Harbour Crossing Company about this line of reasoning. If you increase the toll by just $5, the pressure on Eastern Harbour Crossing and Cross Harbour Tunnel will be much less, and you have a higher chance of getting it approved by the Council. On the question of exempting the tolls, tunnel tolls for franchise buses, then I'm in support of this. What about all other public transport providers? Well, you are afraid that they will just pocket the difference, but of course you can consider this in approving the fares. Are you going to increase the number of parking spaces near railway stations so that you can encourage people to use park and ride? The land is already there. I've heard Mr. Tin's comments on the proposal to redistribute traffic of the 3 tunnels. Well, we'll present our plan to the members next month, and then we have a chance to talk about it. It's not that we cannot talk to the Western Harbour Crossing again, but I've already told you that it will take time. Well, you should tell them that this is really about the relative toll levels. Well, the franchise will end in 2023, and any renegotiation will take time. Well, we have a consistent policy, and congestion charging proposal is that we would like to encourage the use of more efficient public transport so that the tolls that they pay will be reduced. As for the Twin Moon park and ride facilities, we will talk to the department and then revert to members later. Mr. Poon Siu Ping, in paragraph 253, this chief executive talk about the need to enhance the safety and efficiency of public transport, and to encourage people to use public transport services. A few days ago, we had a big incident. The 4 MTR lines were affected, leading to chaos. We hope that this will not be repeated. We've been told that our vehicles in Hong Kong have been growing by 3% annually. according to the Transport Department, we're talking about additionally 20-odd thousand vehicles will be using the road, since we have a total fleet of 850,000 in the next 5 years. We are going to see the provision of 1,500 additional car parking spaces, or just 500 per year. And if we just look at the number of commercial vehicles that we are going to see coming on stream, it's more than 1,200. I know that it's difficult to get land for this. What kind of parking spaces are we talking about? I mean the 1,500 additional parking spaces. What are they? Where are they? And there's no cap put on the total number of vehicles, and you want to rely on the electronic road pricing to solve the problem. There will be a consultation in 2019 for the electronic road pricing. It has been a topic for a long time. What if this doesn't work? What other policies do you have? And let's now turn to water taxi. You hope that you can start the service in the first quarter of 2020. What's the progress so far? Thank you for your questions. There are many questions about details. I'll defer to the Commissioner for Transport. Thank you, Mr. Poon, for your questions. On the number of car parking spaces, we have a total of 750,000 in Hong Kong. The rate of increase annually is 0.9%. So we're seeing additionally a few thousand more parking spaces every year. The 1,500 mentioned in the policy address will be in government GIC sites, and we will adopt this single-site multiple use approach to provide more parking spaces on GIC land. There are other measures to increase parking spaces. We would encourage STT car parks to provide a minimum number of a specified minimum number of spaces for the commercial vehicles. And we also encourage private commercial car park operators to allow more commercial vehicles to park there. What about water taxi? We have completed the invitation for expression of interest exercise. We received 2 responses, and earlier next year, in the first quarter next year, we hope that we'll be able to proceed to the tendering stage. Dr. Cheng Chung Tai, the policy address talks about the proposal to divert traffic among the 3 tunnels, so there will be a toll decrease of $20 in Western Harbour Crossing, but toll increase for Eastern Harbour Crossing and Cross Harbour Tunnel. I'm a radical person. I think this plan of the government is also very radical. Why do you have to increase the tolls for EHC and the CHC by so much? And NT East residents and Tseung Kwan O residents have no choice but to pay more in tolls. There's no way that they can use WHC. I hope the government will come up with a more pragmatic proposal. Let's try it out. Well, let's see if we can achieve good results with WHC tolls reduced. Well, if you say that the 2 operators of WHC will not be happy if we reduce the tolls of HHC and CHC, they will not be happy. Then, well, you should not just take care of the inches. And in the past, well, such proposals are subject to negative vetting, but not this one. We are told that take it or leave it. So we have no choice. If we reject it, you will say that we don't work with you to find a solution. But at the same time, you are saying that this is not going to be amended in any way. So why don't you just reduce WHC tolls first? You are being radical, too radical. Secretary, thank you for your question. Dr. Chiang, well, our proposal is not radical. We have taken into account the overall interests of society and also the effectiveness of toll adjustments to varying degrees, and also the effectiveness in directing traffic and the length of queues of different tunnels, and to what extent the queue would affect nearby traffic, and also the how the adjustments can affect the response of motorists and passengers. I respect Dr. Chiang's views, but we in the government must adjust our transport policies to tie in with our philosophy, and that is transport mode which is more efficient and which has a higher capacity should be given priority treatment. Of course, we need to do our job properly first. Therefore, our colleagues and our consultants have been using a computer modeling simulation to come up with this what we see as an ideal proposal. And we're not preempting your decisions. We have the duty to work out something first, and then we present what we see as a reasonable proposal to the Council. And with the support of this Council, we need the funding approval of the Finance Committee before we proceed further. Some members have asked us to talk to the WHC operator again. Well, we don't rule this out, but the reality is that in the past, we spent about half a year in the discussion. We haven't got an agreement yet. We only have some in principle on consensus. And if we want to do it again, we need to amend the law. We need to secure funding approval from the FCC again. So is that going to be really meaningful, given that the franchise would expire in 2023? We have to consider all these factors. It's already 11:15, and 70 members are still waiting to speak. I'll draw the line. Next, Mr. Alvin Young. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for the Secretary. On what basis or when will the government on the Bureau consider other proposals for the redistribution of traffic of the tunnels? Or do you insist on this take it or leave it approach? Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Young, for the question. In answering other members, I had already said clearly that I hope the details and the arrangement of the entire proposal can be disclosed to members at the next transport panel meeting, so members can have an understanding, and then members can have a full discussion and comment on the proposal. I think that will be better. Well, Mr. Young, you asked me under what circumstances we can reopen the discussion. I think that is hypothetical, meaning that we should go back and discuss it again. But as I said, before you ask the question, Mr. Young, under what circumstances we would be happy to reopen the discussion. But I already talked about the constraints, including temporal constraints. I hope you understand that. Chairman, maybe I can go to another topic, because Mr. Secretary is saying that we should leave it till the next panel meeting. Well, fine. Let me talk about railways. In para 256 of the PA, you just say that we will progressively implement the new railway projects proposed under the RDS 2014, and you said more in para 17 of your paper today. Just now, you don't agree that we are going to use railway as the main transport mode. But then in para 17, you say under the principle of centered on public transport with railway as the backbone. But now we have experienced extreme chaos, a few of them on our railways. Do you still want to stand by your principle in para 17, that it is a principle of centered on public transport with railway as the backbone? If you do, when there are chaos caused on the railway like 2 days ago, and if there should be another natural disaster, do we have alternatives or fallback options in order to cope with such situations? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Yang. We say it is centered on public transport. This is our policy. That has been so for a long time. Public transport is good because it's cost effective, it has a high social effectiveness, and also is a mass carrier. It provides the larger chunk of transport for the public. And we say today what kind of transport we can provide apart from railways. Well, let me be frank with you. A train can carry 2,000 passengers. A bus can carry over 100 passengers. And frankly speaking, given today's situation, I don't think we can think of anything that can replace railways. However, when railways are not efficient, how can we reduce the impact on the public? We have residential coaches, we have long-haul dedicated bus routes, and also in emergencies, how we can deploy public transport resources in order to relieve congestion and the public's suffering. Well, we'll continue to look into that. Mr. Lam Shatin. Chairman, the PA says that we will have public transport as the center with railway as the backbone. It also said that you would monitor the MTRCL to provide safe and reliable transportation and also to relieve congestion in peak hours. What we see, Chairman, is that the MTR is very congested in peak hours. What we expect the MTR to do is just to provide basic services during peak hours. You saw that all 4 lines were affected by the signaling system, and still, even now, we don't know the exact cause of that chaos. Secretary, you said you can't help it. A train can carry 2,000 passengers and a bus carries 100 passengers. Well, I understand that. It's difficult for us not to rely on railways, but must it be the present company? You're a director of the present MTR company. Look at the last year or so. Look at the infrastructural projects and operation and management. Do you still think that the management and operation quality of MTRCL can give you 100% confidence? If not, will you consider introducing other railway companies so that MTRCL will not be the sole operator? You took up issues with MTRCL in the past, but they turned a deaf ear to you because it thought that it was the only expert in railway operation in Hong Kong, and it might think that it is the best player amongst the world. Mrs. Regina Ip is smiling at this statement of mine. So perhaps you can introduce some competition. It will be also good for the MTR staff because they can leave the company and go to another one. So there will be competition in terms of manpower, technical skills, and also other aspects. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for the question. We know where you're coming from. If there can be another suitable operator with the necessary competency, well, we will not rule out the possibility. But all over the world, there are many other companies with that kind of competency. Are you saying that you are going to open up the market? Well, no, I'm not saying that. We are not going that far, Mr. Lam. we do not rule out any other arrangements. But in Hong Kong, we have a very crowded environment with not much land. If you want to introduce competition, you have to consider the supply of electricity, and also if you are talking about railways, you need to balance the ecology. No, we are not talking about the ecology. You are implementing this policy so that there can be only one railway company in Hong Kong. This is not any kind of natural ecology. It's not natural. You did it. What, Secretary? No, we want to say clearly that, Mr. Lam, you say you are introducing competition because you're not happy with the services of the MTR. As I was saying, given the present situation, we want to improve railway services so we can meet the expectation of society. This is the main point. Well, yes, you have to improve the service, but shouldn't you allow other operators to come in? Would you try to invite them to join the Hong Kong market? Sorry, your time is up. Secretary, your last word. We don't rule out any possibility, but we must see operators with the right competency. Well, you can look around the world. Mr. Oh Not Hin, I have 3 views. 1, water taxis. You should not only operate it from Central to Hong Kong, but from the Western District, Sai Wan Ho, and the western part. They also need water taxis. And then about universal accessibility, I have a plan that has the support of the District Council, but the Housing Authority has to agree before something can be built. Ms. Mabel Chan, Commissioner, can you attend a meeting so that you can revise the scheme so that my proposal can be carried forward? And number 3, it is said that you will build a few railways, including South Island Line West and also Tung Chung Eastern and Western stations. I want a specific timetable for those. And in fact, my question is about the Secretary's reply. He said that you have to work harder to tackle emergencies on the railway. I'd like to talk about the Emergency Traffic Issue Control Center. What happened the other day when the 4 lines all collapsed? Well, just now a member also said that this is a policy address briefing. If something has nothing to do with the PA but has to do with railways, we can leave that to the Railway Subcommittee. Thank you. Thank you for the view. No, you don't have to respond to the 3 proposals. I'm done with it. In the PA, you said you need to enhance public transport. You also replied in saying that you would improve railway services. I hope you can tell us about it. There was this chaotic incident. How did you define it? How did you make use of the Emergency Transport Coordination Center? The Commissioner, about the MTR incident, the Emergency Traffic Coordination Center has been in close contact with the MTRCL. After there were breakdowns on the various lines, we kicked off contingency measures, including liaising with bus companies. And at Yau Tong and other stations, we increased feeder services. On that day, the MTRCL needed time to look for the cause and also to undertake contingency measures. We urged the MTRCL to do good crowd control on platforms. And we also asked I was aware that there was not even one press release from the TD, Mr. Frank Chan, went to RTHK. Well, it was coincidental that he was attending a radio program. Had there not been that program, he would not have responded. You said there were feeder services, but actually at your ETCC, there is an action checklist. You should follow that checklist if there is anything that is happening with a line, but you did not follow it. You did not issue any press release. You did not provide enough bus services. Did you exercise your function to tackle emergency traffic events? You should review this. There is no time to respond. Well, to be fair, on that day, the government team did a lot of work. As the commissioner said, I myself communicated with the MTRCL, and I was aware of the release of information to the public on radio stations and on mobile apps. That is why the public were able to leave the stations and take other modes of transport, and that goes to show that the flow of information is effective. Sorry, Mr. Gary Chan, I already drew a line and you would not be able to ask questions. Now it's my turn. Secretary. The PA did not say that there would be an overall or comprehensive transport strategy review. Now we base our public transport system on railways, but that was set 20 years ago. Now we have the feeling that you are too much inclined on railways. You have RDS and you are reviewing it every year, but what about road transport and road development? Because of recent incidents, Secretary, can we have another CTS? Secondly, parking. You provide another 1,500. That's a drop in the ocean. You're not going to be able to cope with the serious shortage. Now, why is there a shortage? It's because in the past 5 years, you have been suppressing the increase of parking spaces. All new buildings are not providing parking spaces. Even if they are next to a railway station, they are not providing parking spaces. Can we have a much bigger increase, especially near railways, so people can park and ride? Number 3, subsidy for cross-harbour franchised buses. I received a letter just now downstairs. They are unfranchised, but they are providing public transport. You are not subsidizing them. You forgot them all the time. Last time in the WT or WITSS, you did not include them, and in fact they were in the same situation. Say they have the same operational difficulties like being unable to hire drivers, and you are only subsidizing franchise buses but not resident coaches or employees buses.
Let me first of all take the question on, transport policy strategy. The chairman is concerned about this. Well, in the past, we have this comprehensive review on public transport policy, and then we introduce some enhancement. For example, we have the 2014 RDS on railway development, and there were also public transport strategy reviewed. And recently, we have the 2030 plus, which will cover development for trunk roads and railway. Well, you may think these are different from the transport policy review, but actually they would achieve similar results. Because if we have a comprehensive review of traffic as a whole, it would take a long time. But so instead, we would look at specific areas of public transport, and we achieve the the same improvements. I hope this can address your concern, Mr. Chairman. On the question of the waiver of tunnel tolls for franchise buses, as I've said, the situation with tolls paid by other public transport providers, we'll look into this in our review. As regards the 1,500 additional car parking spaces, while we are talking about the additional provision arising from the single-site multiple-use approach on GIC land, we will provide more parking spaces through other arrangements. And we're also going to introduce a change that is in the future. In the future public housing projects, we are going to provide more parking spaces for the general public so that we can increase the supply, overall supply for the public. Mr. Frankie Yick, well, I have 4 questions. I hope you will give short answers. For example, you consider congestion charging in paragraph 23. And it said that you would give priority to the economically beneficial vehicles, that is commercial vehicles, to use these facilities. So is it that in the future commercial vehicles may be asked to pay lower tolls? And another question is about the waiving of tolls for franchise buses. This is the 3rd time you commit the same mistake. The first time, for the $2 concession for the elderly, you have omitted to do the same for them. And now even red minibuses have joined the scheme. There are ways to solve the problems that you faced in the past. And then for the working family transport subsidy scheme, you have omitted these non-franchise service providers again. Please tell us what your worries are like on your part, so that I may venture to offer some solutions. On the traffic redistribution of 3 tunnels, cross-harbor tunnels, I've already said that I am in support of this. CHC is the centrally located tunnel, which is the most convenient one, and therefore the tolls should be higher among the 3 tunnels. And you are going to increase tolls for EHC and CHC. Well, some people are saying that the increases are too much. Maybe you should dig deeper into your pocket in subsidizing WHC and do not increase the tolls of CHC and EHC by so much. And then you are going to have some franchise scheme for taxi service. The taxi trade is not happy. It's disappointed about the silence on unlicensed passenger service offered by some private car owners. People are saying that these unlicensed passenger service providers are really creating a lot of chaos. So why don't you do something about them? On the question of goods vehicle and other commercial vehicles, and the treatment of these vehicles, we'll look into this in the context of congestion charging. We'll consider the views expressed by the member and other members. We'll look into the economic analysis. As for the traffic redistribution of the 3 cross-harbor tunnels, we are not providing any subsidy because the so-called subsidy is based on the actual number of users. As for the illegal operation of offering passenger traffic, we have been enforcing the law very strictly. We'll come back to this council in due course for more follow-up discussion. What about the subsidy to be provided to franchise buses only? What about other public service providers? Can they be given the same assistance or treatment? Mr. Chu Hai-tik. The Secretary said the problems or questions on the Shatin Central Link are being looked into by a special committee, so you won't answer those questions. I think the public should know this. According to the press report, in July 2015, the MTRC submitted a report to the Buildings Department and the Railway Office of the Highways Department, saying that Lighton, of its own accord, changed the building plans for some diaphragm walls, 77 of them. In August 2018, you chair a press conference yourself, Mr. Chan, saying that the plans submitted by the MTRC were different from those submitted to the Buildings Department, and then you said that you were surprised by that. But actually, in 2015, you already knew that the building plans were different from those submitted to the Buildings Department. So therefore, you need to change your version of the event accordingly. I know you are not going to answer these questions, so I will stop here. Let me turn to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, which is about to be commissioned. On the mainland side, 9 workers died during the works. For Hong Kong section, including the Link Road, at least 10 workers died during the project. So 19 workers who sacrificed their life for the project. Will the government erect a plaque to so as to remember them, so that the government would be reminded to embark on occupational safety and improvement of a work environment in the future? Many members have talked about the provision of additional parking spaces, but the basic problem is that the government hasn't got any effective plan to reduce the growth of private cars. The overall growth rate is 3%, but the growth rate for private cars is more than 4%. Do you have any plan to drastically, significantly reduce the growth of private cars? As I've said, you can answer the questions on policy address briefing. For those other questions, you can choose to answer them if you like. Well, has Mr. Michael Tin taken over the chairmanship? Well, I've already said that since I have been prompted by members, I've decided to ask the secretary to answer questions accordingly. I hope I'm grateful to the chairman for understanding why I would not like to answer some unrelated question here. Well, first of all, we are very concerned about the growth of the number of private cars. Prague to commemorate the workers who lost their life during the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge project on the shortage of... Chairman, if you don't want to answer the question, say so. Just say so. Mr. Elizabeth Kwok, please take a look at this photo. Do you remember them? The Universal Accessibility Program is a welcome program. You know that this elderly person has lost balance and banged his head. And the Universal Accessibility Program doesn't cover many housing estates. And this incident happened at a Guang Yun estate. This footbridge is used by many people, many elderly people. And from time to time, we see elderly people fail because of the absence of a lift. They have to use the staircase when they go down. I hope the Secretary can give us some good news that the program, the University Accessibility Program, will cover TPS estates. Don't impose unnecessary conditions on the program. And please also install lifts where they are needed. And this incident of MTR involved 4 MTR lines. And for Cheung Kwan Lo line, we have frequent signal failures. This is a long-standing problem, and we haven't seen any proposed solution so far. Some people wonder whether the system has already aged to the extent that we need a replacement. On the traffic redistribution of the 3 cross-harbor tunnels, okay, you can go ahead. Why do you have to increase the tolls of Eastern Harbour Crossing to $40? Why do you have to add to the already heavy burden on the traveling public? And why do you have to subsidize the WHC? We have been voicing a support for providing more parking spaces. I would like to know whether you are going to provide more spaces in new government buildings. There's been a shortage of parking spaces in Mount Shan. We have asked for a car park to be built near the sports stadium there. Are you going to accept this suggestion? Secretary, thank you for your questions. Dr. Kwok, on the Universal Accessibility Program, I've already said that there will be a review. We'll look at all the outstanding projects on our hand. On the question of facilities provided on non-government land, there will be difficulties to overcome. On government owned estates, including TPS estates, we'll look into the problems. The problem with Cheung Kwan Lo line will be looked into by the subcommittee on railways in the context of the performance of our railways. Turning to the traffic redistribution of the 3 tunnels, we're looking at the social benefits. We give priorities to public transport. We want to reduce road traffic congestion, reducing traveling time. And we also consider the implication of congestions of tunnels to other road users. Actually, we have provided some computer simulated scenarios in the paper table for members' information. And when we return next month for the transport panel meeting, we would provide more details on the proposal.
As for parking, we have the one-site multiple-use principle to provide them on GIS and POS sites, but we'll increase them also in public housing estates and developers. We'll also provide more. What about Manshan? Sorry, no time for you. Next, Jeremy Tam. Mr. Tam. Mr. Tam is here. Does he have the mic? A brief question for you, and I want a brief answer. About the 3 cross-harbor tunnels, you'll give $1.8 billion for toll compensation for WHC. Does it mean you're not including the franchise buses? This is the cap. We will look at the number of trips, so it doesn't include franchised buses. Correct. Secondly, you are going to increase the toll for Hung Hom and Eastern Cross Harbor tunnels, 100% actually, for Hung Hom. How much more money will the government get as a result? Secretary, thank you for the question. I think there is some misunderstanding. We don't look at how much more money we get when we increase tolls. We are tackling the traffic flow. No, maybe you do not have that as a purpose, but that is the objective fact. And at Hung Hom Tunnel, you are getting a profit of 660 million every year and 490 million for Eastern Cross Harbour Tunnel. So your increased toll would mean you get more revenue. Can you let us have the figures? Secretary. Ms. Law, we can give the information. Under the WHC toll compensation scheme, that is from 1st of January 2020 to the 1st of August 2023, with regard to private cars, taxis, and motorcycles, as the Secretary said, it will be on a reimbursement basis, and the cap is $1.8 billion. For the same period, the extra toll received from the two other tunnels, if we do not discount the toll to be paid for franchise buses, it will be $875 million. But if we take the franchise buses toll compensation away, it will be $546 million, meaning it will be much less than the compensation to be told to WHC. Okay, there will be $875 million more for the two tunnels. But a few other people mentioned taxis. You can see that for private cars and motorcycles, if you take all the three tunnels together, they will have to pay more. It will be $130 for the three tunnels. However, if you look at taxis, it will mean $100 if you take all the three tunnels together. And later on, it will be $76 for tunnels. If they do not carry any passengers, it will be $45 instead of $90, meaning there is a big compensation for taxis. Just look at WHC. Private cars from $75 to $55, but for taxis from $65 to $36, meaning a compensation of $29. This policy is inclined towards taxis. I have this question for you. There will be more taxis crossing the harbour. Is that the hidden agenda when you redistribute traffic? You are trying to reduce the number of motorcycles and private cars using the tunnels, and you are encouraging people to take taxis. Otherwise, this should not be something you're doing. Secretary. Well, I think this is a misunderstanding. The principle is to encourage mass carriers so the public can have efficiency. But is the taxi a mass carrier? Well, it is part of the public transport system. This is a personalized point-to-point transport, but it's even smaller than a 7-seater private car. Well, never mind. I can take that up with you one month later. No, allow me to add, we have the data. The average capacity of private cars is just 1.4 passengers when they cross the tunnel, meaning they are carrying just 1 to 2 persons when they cross the tunnel. And motorcycles is 1.1, meaning they carry just 1 person most of the time. But the taxi is a public transport carrier. It is on the average 2.4 passengers, including the driver. Well, we are now at 11:50. 8 other members are lining up. I'd like to lengthen the meeting to 12:25. Any objection? If not, we'll end the meeting at 12:25. Next one, UC Wing. First, the Hong Kong section of XRL. It was commissioned on the 23rd of September. If you look at the station and ticketing systems, some problems were experienced. But with efforts made over the past period, there have been improvements. I'd like to thank the government for listening to the sector with regard to booking and ticketing systems. You are selling tickets mostly to individual travelers. Not many companies are organizing tours. This mainly has to do with ticketing measures. I believe with improvement and adjustments in the policy, companies will be happy to organize tours. Actually, many councillors have been asking me when tours can be organized. That goes to show that the market is a big one. But then we rely on the mainland to provide ticketing measures, and it has something to do with the location. And I know that there are difficulties, therefore, well, including the provision of the system. Now things are more on track. I don't know whether the THB is going to pull itself out from the operation, because you may not be involved in the negotiation of details anymore. But I'm afraid that if you remove yourself from it, I am afraid we might not be able to have fruitful negotiations with the mainland. I hope you will not leave the scene until 1 year later. Secondly, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. It was announced that probably it will be commissioned by the end of the month. The sector is saying, however, that the roads around the bridge and also parking, well, we have seen nothing of that. We're all worried that the bridge may be commissioned, but we do not have complementary traffic facilities around it. And in fact, it would make things just worse for traffic and people. Will there be contingency measures upon commissioning instead of making emergency measures only after it is commissioned? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, and the question. About XRL, we will actively follow up on it. As for the bridge, we have very comprehensive transport provision. We have done drills, and the sector has been involved in on-site drills. So there will be these arrangements. Can I ask the Commissioner to give you the details? Ms. Chan, thank you for your concern, Mr. Yu. In preparing for the commissioning of the bridge, we have been trying to get prepared for the coping with incidents around the bridge. In the past few months, we have done drills and rehearsals with the police and other units. We have been using transport sensors and also variable display boards. We have installed them. We are going to provide emergency vehicles. If there should be an emergency in the middle of the bridge and there is a need to divert traffic, we have tried to foresee those situations. And we'll also step up information dissemination. Next one, Regina Ip. Chairman, the 3 tunnels again. The administration told us that there is no room for changing the proposal. And in his remarks, the Secretary said that you can shorten the queue of traffic at Gascoigne Road from 2.9 km to 2.1 km. You have been very exact, so I believe you have the data. Too bad Mr. So is not here. I don't know where he is. He is an economist. I believe you must have projected whether some users are price elastic. If you live in the Eastern District and you go to Kowloon Bay, definitely you don't want to use a Western approach. So can you tell us how many users are price inelastic? Because this will have an impact on the usage in future. There are bound to be users who will stick to the same tunnel, because if you live on one side of the island, you might not want to use another approach. Let me say a few words and then I'll defer to the Commissioner. in the process of doing computer simulation by consultants and also the departments, we have indeed done some projections using the model. And I said next month when we come back, we can give you a detailed introduction and analysis. Now I can defer to the Commissioner to supplement on price elasticity. Commissioner, thank you. Chairman, the detailed data and analysis would be made known next month. I'd just like to say that in using the transport projection model, we have looked at where people live and work, and also their inclination in using public transport. We have done some projection of preferences, meaning we looked at the shortened journey time and shortened queues. We put a price tag on that, and then we did the analysis. And then we did an overall projection on traffic flow. About the Eastern Tunnel, we understand because of its geographical location, there may not be many who will turn to use the WHC. But as the Secretary said, there should be redistribution between Hung Hom and Western crossings so that there will be capacity for Eastern Cross Harbour Tunnel users to use Hung Hom. Well, you are so exact. I believe there must be very precise data. I would wait for them. I'd like to ask you, okay, you may implement it for some time and you don't get the expected results. Will you adjust it? Because the public will have no choice and they will have to pay double the toll. Traffic congestion may not be improved. Will you review it and adjust it? Now you say there is no room for adjustment. Secretary, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. International experience tells us that this computer modeling is rather accurate. But Hong Kong is unique. I don't know whether another situation may arise. I cannot guarantee anything. We hope the result will be as we expected. But what is important is that we need legislative amendments to effect toll change. Well, even if there is a change, there will be a limit to what we can do. By 2023, we'll have the WHC back, and then by that time, we'll have more flexibility. Next, I will hand over the chair to Mr. Jeremy Tam. Dr. Helena Wong. Chairman, I'd like to ask about ferries and water taxis. This may be for the Commissioner. We have asked for revival of the Hung Hom Central ferry route for a long time. We are happy to see you moving in that direction. We welcome water taxis as well.
It seems that for the pickup points, West Kowloon and Kai Tak and on Hong Kong Island, Central. Would there be other pickup points apart from Central on Hong Kong Island? Now that the railway system is not very reliable, we have been relying on railway as our backbone. So there is a high degree of reliance. I don't know whether the system is aging or the management is poor. Well, you can suddenly have an incident affecting 4 lines. Now that the railway system is not so reliable, shouldn't we do something about our transport policy? Should we have other options, such as a ferry or water taxi, which can take passengers across the harbour? And if you are already working on the tendering, please allow for more flexibility. Please allow for the more pickup, loading and unloading points on Hong Kong Island, so that when we have a traffic chaos, when we have an MTR incident, we can get something to help. And you know the tunnels are very congested. The point is we should have more options. We should give people more alternatives so that they can use an alternative route, an alternative road, or they can use other cross-harbor public transport. Water taxi might be regarded as a tourist facility, but at the same time, why don't you make it a transport mode for local people as well? We have talked about the central to Hung Hom ferry route. We are now inviting tenders, and we have already sought views from interested parties. We hope that they would come up with innovative ideas in their tenders on water taxi. Well, of course, as the name suggests, it's available not just for to tourists but to local people. Can we have more locations designated for water taxi on Hong Kong Island and other places? Well, that would depend on the demand, service demand. We'll look at the service level. Well, don't reject this point blank. Perhaps you can ask the commissioner to say something. Well, we'll look at the demand level. We are not rejecting it, but we don't want to give empty promises now. Maybe the commissioner can say something. When we consider the pickup and loading and unloading locations, we'll consider the suitability of the location and the passengers' needs. We have received two responses in the invitation for interest. We will see whether the routes can be adjusted flexibly, and perhaps some shorter routes can be offered. For intra-harbor traffic, we have a route serving Hong Kong, between Hong Kong and North Point. We'll be open-minded and listen to views during the tendering process. Mr. Tommy Cheung, I have no intention to teach you how to do your job, Secretary. The Liberal Party has always been in support of traffic redistribution of these three tunnels, but in providing a subsidy to Western Harbour Crossing, you are not subsidizing the tunnel company. You are subsidizing the motorists using WHC. And WHC can increase the tolls without the need to get approval from this council or the government. But for this agreement, if they agreed to sign the agreement, they will have no flexibility. They will not be able to adjust their tolls before 2023, and then it would be beneficial to motorists who have no choice but to use the WHC. Apart from the questions put to you by Mr. Frankie Yek, we do not have any other objections to the proposal. We have been saying that we should adopt a new thinking. We should adopt road infrastructure as a priority. You should do planning for all the district during under the land sharing proposal. You have to consider the need for roads, for infrastructure, so that you can house people in public rental housing or the home starters estates. So we should give first priority to road infrastructure. You can resume land for roads. The private landowner cannot stop you from doing this. Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for your questions. Yes, we need to provide details on the traffic distribution of the three tunnels. So as I've said, we'll come back next month. Time is short today. Now, we cannot really go into great detail today. On the question of giving priority to the infrastructure, well, this is already adopted under the Land Town Tomorrow vision. Land use must be planned properly in advance. When the departments have done this, and the planning is properly done, and then when the outline zoning plan is finalized, we'll look at the number of residents, where people go to work, and then there will be traffic modeling studies in order to decide on the provision of infrastructure. Under the land sharing proposal, the relevant departments would do the planning, and everything would proceed as in accordance with the established arrangement. I hope you would consider putting the priority to infrastructure, because very often people objected to new developments because of lack of infrastructure, and they don't want to see the new population move into their district without roads or infrastructure. And you are going to have a dedicated fund under the fiscal reserve. This is, of course, not your portfolio, Secretary, but can we have a dedicated fund for infrastructure so that future surpluses can be injected into the fund? Well, on the issues related to infrastructure, I'll certainly talk to other bureaus and relay your views. Mr. Chair. Mr. Leung Chi-Cheong. I'm in support of the toll waiver for franchise buses because it will reduce the burden of bus passengers. But then that will lead to another problem that other non-franchise transport providers are not getting the same treatment. So I certainly want the government to improve along this direction. On the traffic redistribution of the 3 tunnels, by reducing tolls of the WHT, some motorists will be diverted from CHT, Cross Harbour Tunnel, to WHC. You've answered some of the questions of Mrs. Regina Yip, but it's kind of vague. Are you really going to attract some of them to use WHC? Let's say you increase the toll by $20, and I really cannot use WHT. I would just regard this as a toll increase. So if that's the case, how can you reduce traffic congestion of Cross Harbour Tunnel? And if I'm using the WHT, I may be attracted to CHT since you claim that the traffic there will be improved. So please let people know when congestion is more serious at CHT instead of WHC. People should be informed of the traffic so that they can make a choice. Maybe a displayed information panel be provided to tell people what to do. And also we should have a smart traffic management. Maybe we should provide information through the display panels about the availability of parking spaces in certain car parks before the motorist actually arrives at the car park. In the NT, we have kiosks selling cooked food. Not many can be found in the urban area, but there are some in the NT. The port ratio is low. Can those kiosks be converted into car multiple story car park with 2 or 3 stories. Lastly, it said that on the 23rd, the ribbon will be cut to commission the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, but no arrangement has been announced. People who and the motorists who are eligible, who are allowed to use the bridge, do not know any detail. This is different from other boundary crossing facility. But for other facilities, people will be informed in advance, and also on the eligibility to apply for permits, etc. Well, please leave some time for answers. On the traffic redistribution of the 3 tunnels, we'll come back to talk about that in detail next time. As the member said, there are people who have to use Cheung Kwan No Tunnel or Eastern Harbour Crossing Tunnel. We are talking about those motorists. We can divert some of them from Cross Harbour Tunnel to the WHC, and that would be what we want to achieve. Dr. Priscilla Leung. I have 2 questions for the Secretary. Number 1, on the traffic redistribution of the 3 Cross Harbour tunnels. When you decide on the toll increases, you have to differentiate 2 types of passenger. First, people who have no choice, people from the grassroots, and they would like to save on tolls, and they will use a Cross Harbour tunnel anyway. And there are people who have choices to make. And I have declared my interest. I use the Western Harbour Crossing 2 times a day, and I want to pay a higher toll to buy time, to save time. It's okay that you reduce tolls by some degree, so that you can increase the patronage, but don't reduce the toll by a big margin, so that you cause congestion there. Well, people will be affected by the toll increase if they have no choice, either because of the relevant location they are in, and they would be forced to pay higher tolls, and they would be very vocal in protests, and of course the members in this council have to reflect their views. And please don't say that the toll adjustments must be what they are as proposal, and there's no room for change. If you reduce WHC tolls to increase usage, I think this will attract the least objection, although some people may be concerned that it will cause congestion. I think the toll increase for Eastern Harbour Crossing and Cross Harbour Tunnel is too much. Perhaps you should ask your team to look into that.
It's important to give a choice to motorists. Number 2, parking. Now we have indigestion on our roads. Let me talk about Kowloon West. The Middle Road and Yamate car parks have been demolished. Now we have XRL. Canton Road is much improved, but the entire Tsim Sha Tsui is still quite congested. Motorists can't find a place to park. You must provide parking spaces as a proportion of housing, but now there is indigestion and people are aggrieved. You should ask developers to provide a few stories of car parks in new buildings. The same goes for public housing. You should allow motorists to make use of public car parks. Of course, I agree we should encourage people to take public transport, but sometimes people have no choice. Sorry, Ms. Leung, would you like to give the Secretary some time to respond? He has only got 10 seconds. Thank you for the question. About the 3 tunnels, I have heard Ms. Leung. When we come back next month, we can give a full answer to Ms. Leung. As for parking, as we said, whether it is public or private development, we will provide parking spaces, and we'll also build multi-story car parks. Mr. Michael Look. Thank you, Chair. We welcome the policy of waiving tolls for franchised buses. How can that benefit the passengers? Let's look at WHC. It charges buses $183. And passengers should be able to save $1 every trip. Well, perhaps you say we should not just look at one trip. However, the present mechanism is such that you give people the feeling you are only helping the bus company save money. It seems the passengers are not going to benefit vis-a-vis their fares. You say it should be put into a particular fund. Well, at least there should be a cap. If the cap is reached, then there should be rebates for passengers. Maybe on cross-harbor routes. Usually cross-harbor routes are more expensive. Number 2, I'm also worried about parking. I don't know whether this has been asked by many members. The PA says you increase 1,500 parking spaces. I'd like to know whether you have specific distribution. What is the time frame for providing 1,500 parking spaces? Is it going to be within existing infrastructure, or are you going to build new car parks? Are you going to provide them on idle government land? Can you give us clearer information? I think there is a cap, but then the Secretary can answer the questions. Thank you. About tunnels, there will be a toll waiver for buses. The revenue saved would be put into a fund. When the cap is reached, the bus companies will have to rebate that to members of the public. So your understanding is the same as ours. As for the 1,500 parking spaces, they would be provided mainly in GIC and POS sites. I can ask the Commissioner to give you some examples. Chairman, Mr. Look, we expect to provide the 1,500 parking spaces in the next 5 years. They would be in GIC or POS sites under planning, like in the Joint User Government Building in Tseung Kwan O and also the one in Simei Street. These are projects under planning. To follow up, one, you say there is a cap, but what about the exact amount? Also, you provide 1,500 parking spaces. Would that mean a net increase? Or is it that you provide these, but then you are going to demolish another 2 car parks? Secretary, thank you. We are still looking at the cap. We consider imposing a cap because when bus companies are facing pressure for fare increase, the fund will provide some stability effect. But then, every cent would be used on the public. The bus companies will not stand to gain. As for the 1,500 parking spaces, they are new provision, and we are only talking about government and community sites. However, we are going to use the Hong Kong PSG to require both public and private developments to provide parking so we can provide more to the public. Ms. Ann Chang. Chairman, at present, the 3 tunnels are all congested to different degrees. Of course, it's more serious for CHT and EHC. My question for you is, Secretary, you are going to have a kind of cross-subsidization amongst the tolls, but it will not be implemented before another year has passed. But the vehicle fleet is growing fast. You said there have been the increase of tens of thousands of vehicles in the past 10 years. And 1 year down the road, there may be, again, thousands of vehicles more. By the time the 3 tunnels will still be congested, what is your fallback position? Secretary. Thank you, Ms. Chang. Indeed, if the vehicle fleet will continue to grow, we have to do something. Traffic and transport is like managing water. First, you divert it. If we achieve some effect and more people use public transport, then private cars, taxis, and motorcycles should make use of the tunnels less. Today, 75% of cross-harbor traffic is made up of private cars, motorcycles, and taxis. Of course, if we can provide parking spaces, but then if we do not increase those and the road network on a par with the increase in cars, then we'll really have to manage the growth of the vehicle fleet. Ms. Chang. But no matter how you increase the tolls, there will not be fewer cars. After a year or so, there will just be more cars. Do you have any plans to do something on the east, on the west, and build more cross-harbor tunnels? Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Chang. We don't rule out the possibility of building more cross-harbor tunnels, but if you look at the Lantau Tomorrow vision in the PA, you will see a tunnel leading up with the Lantau of tomorrow. We hope it will provide some relief. But in our transport policy, we want to center on public transport. When we have better public transport, the public can have smart mobility and green transport. So naturally, we will reduce our reliance on private cars. Of course, there will still be people who need to use private cars, but individuals can have their own choice. Our transport policy is to try to manage and divert traffic so as to improve the overall situation. Ms. Chang, you have to know that experience tells us that when you do your planning, when you then eventually build tunnels, it usually takes 20 years from conception to commissioning. So perhaps you should start planning today. And some experts proposed that the administration should look at central. Sorry, Ms. Chang, we have to end the meeting. You have no more time. Why don't you build another central in the NT? Another central in the NT. Can you think about it? Well, that has to do with town planning. I will talk to the Development Bureau. Thank you. We thank the officials for coming. The next panel meeting will be held on the 16th of November at 10 a.m. If there is nothing under AOB, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.